I'm going to keep an eye on the chat, but we'll just let this group kind of jump in and talk about some of the pilots they're doing. I don't know, Tammy, you can interject if you have something specific you'd like to do.
No, I think we just want to organize it so we hear from the elementary crew first, and then the secondary crew. And if you don't talk about the things that I think I want you to talk about, I'll be sure to ask the right questions.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we'll start off with just talking about some of the pilots that we've introduced in our school this year. We've really focused first on social emotional wellness of our kids and social emotional learning. And one thing that we decided to do is start our day off as a community. So every person in the building starts their day off together in our commons area for 10 minutes with some music and movement led by our music teacher. And then we, of course, have the normal things you do in the morning with the Pledge of Allegiance, a school pledge, a message, a morning message from either myself, the principal, or the guidance counselor, really focusing on character building and citizenship. And from there, then the kids go to their classrooms for a morning meeting. Again, the sole focus is social emotional learning and starting their day off in the right way, and really to identify if kids have needs before the learning begins. So I'm going to pass it over to our guidance counselor to talk about, those morning meetings and what that entails once they go to their classrooms.
Okay. All right, well, once they get back to their classrooms, they have the morning meeting structure is from the responsive classroom, and they have a time to share with one another, so they all have a time to speak and get something off their chest if they need to. They still do lunch count and all those things. And then there's also a classroom message that they can send, and sometimes the teachers will align that with the message that we have at JAG time from our community time as a school. And then that's been really great just to see. There's been several times where we've started implementing the zones of regulation with that. And so there's been a couple times where kids will express to their teachers that they're in the blue zone, they're feeling really sad, or maybe even in the red zone, feeling angry from something that happened that morning, and they're able to take care of that before the rest of their day begins. And I would say almost everywhere in our building, zones have been implemented. We're still working on more training with that, but our staff's really on board. And we've had pockets of teachers piloting a peace corner to help them with the zones. And we have pockets of small group instruction. Mrs. Ruxlow is doing some of that for some tier 2 or tier 3 kids that might need that personalized instruction. And then I do some personalized instruction on that as well, and then whole group and guidance lessons. And then something else that we're looking at social emotionally is moving second step into the classrooms, having teachers do that as part of their morning meeting. And then, because right now I teach guidance classes with the second step curriculum, and then that would free me up more to do more interventions and more pull-out services, just again to hit head on more of the social emotional needs.
So another pilot that we're looking at is how are we really personalizing learning? So I'm going to let Paul, our 5th grade teacher, talk about that, and Marcy, our special ed teacher.
Do you want to start us out?
Yeah, I can. Well, Paul will talk to you about what can happen in 4th and 5th grade with Summit, but since Summit doesn't happen below 4th grade, we are piloting some other platforms right now for literacy and for math. iReady is literacy and math, so we have a teacher piloting that, and others we have in math are Dreambox, Zern, and Redbird. Those are actually just getting started, or I think a couple of them haven't started yet, so we haven't gotten very far with it to know whether or not they are going to suit our needs, but hopefully after this next month to 6 weeks we'll have a better answer.
So as I jump in about Summit, I know a lot of schools were already at the Summit training. We went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and watched a couple schools that were utilizing Summit. And so we had a little bit of a preview before that meeting. I really appreciated the summit training, as I'm sure you did too, because I felt like the program was really focusing more on whether or not our philosophy is aligned and if it would be a good partnership as opposed to just rolling out a product. Part of the summit platform that we're really excited about, because it aligns with some of the other things that we're wanting to work on, is their Buck Institute PBL. We already have a slice of PBL planned with Buck Institute. And so we really like how Summit already is using that. And so it seems like a lot of dominoes are falling together there. Another thing that we're working on is we call it #experience. And so it's kind of partnered with PBL, but a little bit different. The experience that we're looking for is that students are able to have a lot of choice, and they select one of like 12 different options to explore or experience. And that way they can have a multi-age. So we have two early childhood areas, like a first grade and a second grade. And then we have a 4th and 5th grade teacher piloting those things. So the students will be able to explore some things like that and work on social emotional, work on some skills that are a little bit more broad and engaged in the civic engagement realm of those things.
Another thing that we're piloting is we've shared music teachers across our district, and our Board of Education has supported us having our music teacher in our building full time. And so I'm going to turn that over to our music teacher, Lisa Simling, to talk about kind of some of the things she's doing with that pilot.
Yes, we are continuing our regular music classes as normal, of course, but we've been working really hard to integrate music in different ways in the building. I've gotten to interact more with our early childhood classes, which has been wonderful. Also, we are working to develop some music therapy, I don't know what to say, music therapy meetings with some students who either have specific skill areas they need to develop, or even some social emotional small groups to help them work a little better together. I'm also working with several of the different classrooms in their project-based learning to incorporate music in those projects. And it's just been really a great experience to have time to collaborate with the teachers in the building rather than running from one building to another. And it feels like we're working together to benefit the kids instead of separately.
So Lisa mentioned a little bit about project-based learning, and that's something that as a whole school we've taken on, and we're bringing in some training for all of our staff to implement project-based learning over long term. So every classroom will be experiencing project-based learning before spring break, and so that's just an overview of some of the pilots that we've implemented right now. And so I don't know if there's any questions about that, or if Tammy has any questions that she wants to ask us. Sure.
Oh, sure. I can ask some questions. I'd like for the teachers on the Eisenhower redesign team to talk a little bit about. Well, for one, I'm super proud of your growth and how much you have really led this work. Can you guys speak a little bit to how your redesign team works and what it feels like for it to be teacher-led within the guardrails that the principal provides? Chris or anyone from the team?
Yeah.
Paul, you always have something to say.
So I'm a little bit of a transplant, because the team actually began last year just as our building leadership team. And so they were doing a great job of leading. And then when we were selected to be part of the Mercury 7, that leadership team mutated and took on the responsibility of being our steering committee. And so we work really diligently to communicate with our staff. We have like a feedback loop. We always have what's best for our whole staff, and most importantly, what's best for the students in mind. So really, it becomes just everybody advocating for that mission. And so I think the thing that works really well is that we all tend to be a little bit more of a dive in type of personality. And so we're really passionate about what could be. And then we always have like a check back. So this is what we think can happen. Where might be some areas of friction or concern. And then within that, we on the back of our minds always have a level of concern and interest in making sure that what we're doing is really fitting what's best for students and it fulfills the mission that we've set up. A lot of what we're doing, I think we can track back, especially after our summit learning, where we went through like just a verification of that our visions were set up to align with the community goals and things like that. So we can see a really natural progression from our beliefs to what we're piloting, and we have a deep understanding of why. So I don't know if that's really answering your question, but our team seems to support the same vision. And so there's a lot less, scattering of ideas, and, people aren't necessarily pulling in different directions. We're all pushing toward the same end goal.
I'm seeing some questions come through that I'm going to ask Mrs. Simmerling to talk a little bit about because one of the questions was posed. Curious if our music teacher was always in the building full time, or was that a change? And so I'll let her talk about maybe what her schedule looked like before, what it looks like now, and then how that ultimately changed, or how that was able to be the change.
All right, yeah, for the past 5 years since I've been here, I've split my time between 2 schools. So I teach all the children at Eisenhower, and then I teach 2 grades at another elementary in our district. And so all of the schedules of all the elementary schools are very much based around sharing the music teachers and the PE teachers and the art teachers. And so it wasn't allowing a lot of flexibility for us to try these new pilots and changing things within our school. And it didn't allow me or the other specials teachers to spend time with the staff members at each school and integrate the way that we're able to do right now with the music. And I saw a question that also asked about the other, the PE and the art teachers. They right now are still doing the job the way I have done it for the past 5 years. And our hope is that we will be able to have everyone in one building next year to make it a real family team, that we're all working for the best of those children, and allowing our flexibility to change all of these pilots to be integrated the way they should be. Did I answer?
An additional question that came up was about Buck Institute. I know the middle school will talk a little bit about this, but this group had actually had looked into project-based learning a little bit before. Does anybody want to talk about what you've looked at? Unfortunately, Ellen isn't here with us today, who went to PBL 101 through Buck Institute, but if anyone wants to talk a little bit about it.
Sure. All right. We originated, we have ESDAC, which is I don't know what you call it, a learning center, a service center, which is near us, and they have some experts on PBL. And so we invited one of their representatives in, and we kind of had a little taste of what PBL could look like. And unfortunately, it was geared more toward the upper end of our school. And so we needed to pursue a little bit of a different style of PBL, or a different opportunity for that. And so that's really what drove us into looking more toward Buck. Buck tends to be kind of the name brand for PBL. And also, just as we started looking more deeply into things like Summit and several other opportunities, we see that Buck is really transitioning all the way through those things. And so it seems like a really logical thing. Our school has had a teacher that went to a Buck training in Kansas City. And so she came back, and I think it was a lot of information and a lot of eye-opening information. And so I think that it's really endorsing our pursuit of that training a little bit more and invested and deeply.
I can speak upon changing the subject a little bit about communication among our staff and our community and our parents throughout this process. as much as we feel like we try to do a good job of communicating, it still is difficult to pass along all the discussions and all the time that we've spent to really hash out our vision. But I'll just share a little bit of some of the things we're doing. When we have our meetings, our bi-weekly meetings, we have a meeting with the staff that weren't able to be in those redesign team discussions to let them know what we've been talking about and let them give some feedback. We also have dedicated a monthly staff meeting for an hour and a half to redesign topics. We also have a redesign team member video, a summary of themselves, just talking about what was discussed and decisions made in the meetings, and that goes on social media so that our community and parents can see that. We've had a couple parent nights to inform parents of what's going on and to get feedback from them as well. So those are just a couple ways that we try to communicate what we're doing with our stakeholders.
So what challenges has your redesign team had to overcome from August to this point in time?
Great question.
Challenges. Well, okay, I think one of the hardest things for us has been all of us are very loving sort of people, and so we want to make sure we're keeping everybody happy all of the time, which we realize is not going to happen. And so even within our own team, we've had some tears and coming together and falling apart times, but we've worked through those. And then we worry a lot about making sure our staff members who we care about are felt heard and respected through all of this. We realize also that we are the elected group, and so sometimes we have to make decisions that might not make everyone feel so happy. And it's kind of a weird juxtaposition because we are so focused on the social emotional well-being of the kids that it's hard to sometimes say, well, this is what is best for the kids, but sometimes it makes our social emotional well-being feel a little crazy.
Any logistics that have come up? You changed JAG. How much, you talked about JAG time, how much did that change your day? And then how did, every minutes are short, right? So if you add something, what's that do to the rest of the day?
Sure. Well, we've worked the system a little bit, that our day technically starts at 8:06, but we start our JAG time at 8 o'clock. And so there's kids coming through the doors while we're doing our JAG time. So, but it's really neat to see the kids come together and as a community, and the staff come together as a community. And so we're still looking at tweaking things to make it the best possibly can be. One of the questions on here, again, I'm kind of switching subjects a little bit, but how do we measure that to see if that's successful? Well, we started that pilot on December 1st. And so we figured we'd give it about 2 months. And so we gave a survey at the beginning. The survey included questions like, do you feel safe at school? Do you feel like you're important at school? Things of that nature that all of our kids answered. And then we also we got that same survey to them just the other day, actually. So we gave it 2 months. We haven't dug into that data yet, but we will next week to see if this is truly what's best for the kids, and then we can tweak it from here and there to make it the best possible.
Okay, well, those of you, thank you for posing some questions. Let's go ahead. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and either ask questions or put questions in the chat.
One of the things that I may just interject while we're waiting for some to come, I'll try to share the screen. We talked a little bit about the scoreboard, and I'll try to share what the Eisenhower team is using for their scoreboard. I know it's kind of tough. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So this, and I can let this group talk about it while it's up there, and I can kind of navigate through, but this is what they're using for their scoreboard to track progress on each of their different areas, if someone wants to talk about that.
Well, yeah, and it focuses even more broadly than just the pilots that we're focusing on, and it's more about the 10 structures that we're following with that KSDE put together. And that's something it's work in progress, making sure that we're meeting those needs. And there's some things we still need to focus on, but the Padlet allows us to put information about what we're doing, to keep track of what is successful and what's not, and how we can continue to improve each area. Again, it's a work in progress. It's just we put together recently, but again, it's something that we can share with anyone to show what we're doing.
Well, since they're being kind of quiet and shy today, I would like to ask the Eisenhower crew, throughout this process, what has made you feel the most victorious or the most passionate about knowing that your staff and your redesign team is on the right track?
I think the most positive thing that I've witnessed and seen is the mindset shift of some of our staff. There's some conversations that we've had recently that if we had had the same conversations a month ago, there had been somewhat of an uproar of making some changes, but the mindset has shifted to really focusing on what's best for the kids. And if it's going to make some people unhappy, we're really focusing on the kids instead of necessarily the adults. But with that said, Lisa said it nicely, we still have to make sure our adults their social emotional well-being is good, because they have to be in a good place to be able to take care of our kids. So but that's the biggest thing for me, is their mindset, focusing on what's best for kids.
And I think for me, it's sometimes you get caught up in the whirlwind of all the brainstorming and ideas and trying things on, trying things out. And every once in a while, there'll be a time where you stop and you reflect back on what was the mission at the very beginning, and all the decisions. It's weird. It's just like a natural thing happens where you look back and you say, holy cow, we are truly making progress on our vision, on our mission. And the things that, while they seem a little chaotic or you seem stressed out, when you look back, you've made big steps toward accomplishing the thing that you hold dear to your heart.
You know, you mentioned, can you talk about what the summit training did to reinforce all of what we talked a lot about that, but maybe this group, it'd be good for them to hear, but we talked about how it reinforced the whole process up to this point.
Yeah, sure. So when we first went to the summit, it was weird because summit's like just a group that we're looking at as a piece of this, and it's not like it's not a driving force really. And so when we got there, they kind of posed the question of what is our vision and what's our mission, and it was a little bit like, why are we here? This is what we've been working on the whole time, but we just kind of committed that we were going to do it anyway. And then within minutes, we were like, holy cow, we really need to revisit this. And so when we started putting pictures that identified what our community looked like and educational quotes about what our paradigm is for why we're teaching, we started to reestablish that we were truly on the right track. And so it was just really fascinating that by the end of our summit training, we felt really empowered and encouraged that even though we were looking at a learning platform, really what we were able to do is refocus and refresh that we were truly aligning to the visions we started. And not only that, but through a completely separate process, we re-articulated much of the same thing that we came up with originally. And so I think that kind of proves that whatever we established at the beginning is real and true, what we are believing, what we're actually what we're missional about.
Well, thank you so much to the Eisenhower crew. I know that there have been some interesting comments in the chat, and they did share the link to their local Padlet, so thank you for that. You can continue with the elementary questions if you'd like, but we will take this time now then to transition to the secondary discussion. And with that, Jay is here, and I will leave. So thank you all so much. Thanks, Eisenhower team. You guys are awesome. You're a joy to work with every single time I come out. So appreciate your cooperation and your support of the Gemini schools too.
Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I don't know about you all, but I had to kind of pinch myself to remind myself it's actually February. I don't know where January went. Hopefully everybody's doing well where you are, and you're excited about where you're headed, either as a Gemini school or Mercury school. We have the distinct honor this morning of having on as our secondary Mercury school, McPherson Middle School. And I know that, I believe that they're on. Wave if you're there. There they are. There they are. What an iconic boardroom you have there. I just love that boardroom. So I really appreciate the team at McPherson Middle School coming on this morning. And so if we could, we'll just jump right in. And if we could have the McPherson Middle School Redesign team introduce themselves, and please include your role and the years you have in the district.
Leanne, why don't you start?
Okay. My name is Leanne Reese, and I'm the reading and math specialist at McPherson Middle School, and I've been in the district 27 years.
Wow. Awesome.
I am Jenny Vernon, and I have 8th grade grammar and composition. This is my 13th year with the district, 8th at the middle school.
I'm Brandon Similake, middle school principal. This is my 8th year in the district and 2nd year as building principal.
Great. So I'm assuming that's it. Shiloh, you probably already introduced yourself. Yeah, so you want to introduce yourself again, Shiloh, just to make sure everybody heard who you were?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Shiloh, and I'm working with Jay Scott, so thank you so much. I'm Director of Secondary Ed, and this is a great crew to work with, the middle school, so I'm excited for them to share out the things they've been working on.
I can't wait as well, so we'll just jump right in. So, these questions are for anybody from the redesign team. And as always, Gemini schools out there listening, if you have questions, feel free to use the chat. Somebody from the redesign team there, McPherson, will take care of you. So why don't you start off with telling us some of the, why don't you start off with the goals? What are the goal areas that McPherson Middle School felt like this is what we want to redesign around?
Right. So after we developed our vision, we really started focusing on those areas that we felt were most important for our students to learn. Those started off with social emotional learning, academics, and civic engagement.
Okay, and so from that, lended itself into different levers or strategies that would leverage those goals. So could you talk a little bit about some of the redesign strategies you're piloting this semester as we go forward?
So with the social emotional side, one of the areas that we're trying to do is a pack time. We have a breakfast club. So what I'd like to have is Leanne talk a little bit about those, what those look like, and how those run.
All right. At the middle school, we kind of started talking. We have the kind of advantage, I think, about half of our faculty now is actually elementary before, and then they moved to the middle school. So we kind of noticed that elementary, you do a lot of morning activities, kind of getting the kids involved. Middle school wasn't so much like that. The bell would ring and they would just go to the first hour. So we decided we needed something to kind of hold kind of a family tie together. So Mr. Allman and I started a breakfast club we just kind of started pulling some kids that were eating breakfast every day anyway, and started meeting with them first thing in the morning, and just kind of started asking them what they felt like maybe would make their day a little bit better. And since we started that in October, we actually have more kids coming and asking if they can join the breakfast club. So that's when we decided to start a pack time. And so about 40 teachers at the middle school now have a pack time. And so the first 15 minutes of the day, the kids start with a teacher that they kind of maybe start relating to and have someone that they can always count on every day. And it kind of started after we gave the Tessera assessment. And so pack time starts with daily announcements. So we kind of know, like, if a kid in our class has a birthday or something special going on. And then we kind of open it up with a question of the day. So to get the kids kind of brainstorming and talking. And that way, hopefully we get the kids off on a positive note before they go to their first hour class.
Great. So that's social emotional. Are there other, so that pack time is that start to the day. That's a great idea. And I know it was nice how that kind of organically happened as you were doing investigations and research. You already started piloting something just kind of naturally through the project. So what are some other redesign strategies that you all are piloting there at the middle school?
So on that social emotional side, one of the things that McPherson's done for a number of years is give the ACT Engage. With that going away, we were invited to be part of a Tessera, ACT Tessera PLC group. So that was probably one of the first, pilots that we've done is we've administered that ACT Tessera to our students, but we also had our staff take that Tessera so that they could see the same test that our students would be taking in terms of measuring some of those social emotional skills. So we've received that data back. Our next step on that is to begin to look at that and implement some not engaged lessons, Tessera lessons now. So on the academic side, we've started Packademics. Jenny, do you want to talk a little bit about what Packademics is in our day and why we put that in place?
The students were just talking about how much time they have to spend on work, and how sometimes it would be nice to have time to work during the day. Knowing how involved they are, we have asked them to be involved a lot. I feel like something that's been a push in McPherson for years is to get them involved in extracurricular activities that aren't always sports related. And we have plenty of singing groups and music groups, and there's chess clubs and all those different kind of things. So I think we've been taking up a lot of their after school time for those type of activities. So to try and build in something in the day to give them that opportunity to work during the day, but then also be able to work with teachers who could help them complete their homework if they're not getting that same support outside of their school day. The civic engagement team then also want to take a little bit of that time and start trying to expose the kids to more things that were happening outside in the world. So we have kind of a news 10 time where we have a student-friendly news that's just 10 minutes long, that we have them just watch that video for 10 minutes. Right now we are starting just with the video, but can see that opening up to other things of maybe there are news articles that they could read, those kind of things. Then to be able to move it on to be able to speak about those world events and those things that are going on in the world. So we're calling that, of course, the civil discourse part of it, and be able to take our news, take what's happening in the world, take what we see about what's happening in the world, and then be able to talk about that and to realize that people are going to have different opinions on that. So how can we civilly speak about the things that we're seeing happen in our world? So the News 10 time has been incorporated in that Packademics time. So they'll spend a little bit of time watching the news and talking about it, and then spend a little time on some independent work time to be able to get some of that work done, and then be able, and it is the same pack group as the morning. So the pack that you meet with in the morning is the pack that you meet at Packademics time. So it's that same group of kids. So again, they can use each other as resources. They can use the teacher that they're making a relationship with as a resource to try and get their work done. So, and Packademics is actually during lunchtime. So we have an hour block, 30 minutes of that time is actually their lunchtime, recess, and that kind of thing. So it's been kind of nice to see kids in the middle of the day also to kind of get their afternoon started on the right track. The other thing that's kind of been nice about it are there are some teachers that have actually volunteered basically to do lunch duty. And it's another time to see kids in a totally different arena than in the classroom. So I kind of like that relationship that's being built at lunchtime as well.
So as we keep, I guess, continue talking about that academic focus a little bit, one of the areas that the middle school focused in on fairly quickly based on the things students told us and teachers told us and parents told us was they want to be able to do their learning. They want to be able to experience that. And so we moved quickly to passion-based learning or project-based learning. And we've decided that our initial training there, we want to come through the Buck Institute. So Jenny recently went to 3 days worth of PBL 101 through the Buck Institute. So Jenny, can you talk about what that training was about, what you did during that training, and maybe a little bit about what you came out of it with?
Okay, so yeah, that was actually just last week, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. Spent 3 days at a training. It was PBL 101. Very, very well organized, and I think that's one of the best things that I took out of it was the gentleman who led it for us. He was leading us with the PBL type framework in mind. So I felt like I was living a PBL framework at the same time I was creating a PBL project for my students. And that's actually one of the things that even reinforced my thoughts on how really it is important to have time during the day to work. He provided that for us. He didn't just shove us through a sit and get type training. We experienced PBL, but then he gave time for us to work it through. We experienced more, he gave time for us to work it through. And our brains were very tired by the end of the day. And at that time, we actually were very grateful that we didn't have any homework at the end of the day. But through the process, we were able to see how PBL works, start working on a project. I did not walk away with the ability to start a project the day I came back, but I walked away with a very strong start to a project. You know, a little bit more work on it, a little bit more tweaking on it. I really do feel like I have a project that I can start implementing, which was a great part of the training. So with that, then we will, the four of us from the middle school that went, we are going to kind of put our final touches on our projects, and we're going to tweak them up and get them ready to go. And then that will be part of our process, is to implement our project in our classroom at the same time opening up our classroom to other teachers to invite them to come in and see and experience that as well. So did I get everything?
I think so.
Okay.
So another area we focused on, like the elementary, is wanting to explore an online learning platform. So we've spent some time really looking at Summit Learning. We've visited McClure Elementary in Tulsa and Tulsa Met, which is a 7 through 12 school in Tulsa as well. Leanne, could you talk about those two school trips and kind of what you took from it? And then I can talk a little bit about the Summit Learning training from last week.
I think at first a lot of us would admit that when we heard Summit Learning, we thought we would just go in and see kids on their Chromebook or laptops or whatever, and the teacher not really that much involved. And after visiting those schools, we realized that it really isn't that. It is a time that will free up the teacher, though, to maybe be working in small groups. But it was very, to me, it was very organized, structured. I liked the kids were doing different things. Some kids were on their laptops. At the one school we went into, they were actually working on an English assignment. And some really were working on the laptop, depending on what lesson they were on. It was neat to see that kids could work at different levels. So it didn't matter if you had the high kids, the low kids, the middle kids. Everyone was actually working on something. So I was very impressed. The high school was the same thing. It was nice. We actually got to walk around and visit with some of the kids, the projects they were working on, and they all seemed very engaged.
And last week we took 5 teachers to Topeka for the day 1 of Summit Learning. You know, like Mr. Carver mentioned when he spoke earlier, we really liked the part that it was really digging into our philosophies, digging into our purpose, and just really starting to look at what maybe personalized learning could look like in our schools. So I think it helped us to realize it isn't just a student sitting on a computer all day, but there's it's a mixed platform in terms of there's going to be some online components to it, but you also have the project-based learning piece in there as well. So it really helps to adhere to all students and really focus in on how all of those students learn, whether it's a traditional model or whether it's that project-based learning model.
So that's a phenomenal list of redesign strategies. And so if I could summarize, you have pack time for the social emotional, you have Packademics, that's kind of a blend of academic and civic engagement. You're looking into project-based learning training. You've already got staff that are moving towards that as a pilot. And then you're also exploring an online learning platform, which is phenomenal work. Well, one of the things that, this just doesn't come natural, that in the middle of the school year, that you start piloting some things. And so could you talk a little bit about the logistics that you had to overcome to pull together these pilot redesign strategy phases? And then also you might talk a little bit how you rolled it out with your staff and students.
Do you want to talk about how we rolled it out, and I can talk about logistics?
Sure. It's kind of like the elementary said earlier, change is very difficult. A lot of staff kind of set in the ways that they're used to doing things. So we try to keep everyone on board and stay as positive as we could. Like this elementary also stated that no matter what, you can't make everyone happy. So when we first started talking about the Packademics and pack time, we really wanted it to be every day, Monday through Friday. It was kind of a nightmare with some of our scheduling, which made some of our classes a little bit shorter. Some of the teachers were kind of a little bit edgy about that. So we compromised for now, and pack time and Packademics right now is just the very beginning of the week and the end of the week. So if we have a 5-day week, we have it on Monday and Friday and go with our normal schedule Tuesday through Thursday. We really are hoping eventually to make that work every day of the week, but to compromise. And I know we've only been piloting this a week now, but I've already heard several teachers mention that they really do like it. And they were concerned even a little bit about shorter passing periods. And it seems like a lot of the kids are getting to class better on time now than they were when we had longer passing periods. So I think it is a positive thing. And I think if we all stay positive, that it'll be okay.
One of the questions up here that's related to pack time, maybe you can speak to it, is there a specific lesson plan for pack time, and what types of activities do the students do during that 15-minute time frame?
Yeah. We actually have been working a lot with Mr. Allman, since he's probably the most familiar with Tessera, and that's what we're trying to kind of base it on, are the strategies in Tessera. So he has given the pack time an opening question for every day that we meet. And most of the time, by the time we do announcements and all that, we only have about 10 minutes. And when you have 15 kids, to get them all talking and everything, that opening question pretty much relates itself to long enough to what we do during pack time.
Oh, yes. So I guess it's my turn here. The logistics piece was probably even a little more, and maybe it was more worrisome for me than others, but just trying to figure out how within our Power School system that we can have our students in there so teachers can see who they have, just getting that logistical side of things. I guess maybe more the background side was probably the biggest logistical issue with it, seeing, okay, can Power School do this? Can we create a class for pack time and Packademics so teachers can see who they have, so that during Packademics, if that teacher wants to pull kids and do some mentoring or some one-on-one conversations about grades, they have the opportunity to have some access to them. So just trying to get all of that figured out. I know we have what I like to call our Power School person, our Power School guru, really is trying to see if Gwen, in working with Power School techs, if they can make that happen. but the shortened classes and the shortened passing periods, I know were concerns at first, and I think our kids are doing a great job of really hustling their buns and getting where they need to go in between classes. And
question that popped up there is this is a good logistics question. How do you keep your numbers down? Do paras, elective teachers, and other support staff help out?
Paras are not helping out at this time. If we have SPED students that we think maybe need a little support, they'll come in and help. Elected teachers, yes, they have a pack time since it's not during core academics. So that's how we got our numbers to stay down.
So every teacher, every certified staff member at McPherson Middle School has a pack time and a pack academic time?
Yeah, or they share it with someone else if they're not in our building all day long.
So one of the questions that we also have for you all there is, as far as the redesign strategies and what you're piloting, what data are you looking at to determine the impact or the effectiveness of the piloted strategies as you determine whether that's going to be something part of your redesign or not?
You want to talk about that, Jenny? Maybe a little bit about the data.
Well, we've repeatedly mentioned the Tessera, so we're clearly using that to help us out. We have created some surveys. We've been talking to the kids, those kind of things. So there is a survey that we will send out to the kids for the beginning of the pilot, then ask them the questions again at the end. We are looking at attendance. We do feel like the pack time is supposed to be an improvement for attendance. So looking at how many kids are being marked late and or absent for first hour, and how that changes now that we have a few minutes to get them into the building with pack time. And also just talking about behavior, just looking at our behavior data and seeing, again, have there been improvements in behavior because they're having that connection with more people in the building. So that's where we're starting.
That's great. And making that data public and transparent with your staff. And that's kind of bleeds into the next question is, what steps are you taking to keep all your staff, your parents, and your community informed about the progress that you're making through redesign?
So currently we use quite a bit of our staff meeting time, site council, PTO. We have daily PLC meetings that are content areas, so we'll go into those and talk. We use, sometimes we'll use our Power School blast to be able to blast out information to our teachers and our students and families. So that's kind of where we are right now. One of the areas that we're exploring is, how do we create this visible scoreboard? Do we want to use something similar to what Eisenhower is using with a Padlet? Do we want to use something, some form of Google Doc for it? Do we want to have it on a bulletin board in our building? So we're really starting to look and try to figure out how we can best put that out to parents, family, community, Board of Ed, just to make sure everybody's informed of where we are, what we're doing, and how we're doing.
One of the questions that's up there that I think asked it in a different way is just, how has the middle school informed parents what is going on? Do you have parent nights, and how do you get parents to attend? That's always a great question. That
We've had 2 parent meetings, once at the very beginning of our redesign, and then we offered it again at parent-teacher conferences for them to come in and ask questions. So we've started that way.
you kind of drew your site council a little bit to try to be, can you talk about how you identified some people to pull up?
Yeah, we went through our redesign team, kind of talked a little bit about some different parents or families that we might want involved, and made some specific calls there. So we have expanded that site council. Our site council has really become a site council, but it's also a parent advisory for us in terms of the redesign. We have some parents that are on there that are teachers. We have some parents that are local business owners. We have some parents of affluence, and we have some parents of poverty. So it really has given us a good wide range in terms of parent groups for us to be able to say, hey, here's some things we're doing. Give us some thoughts, and it allows us just to get a little bit of additional information. We also have a student group. Our redesign team created a list of students they thought would be good, that would have some similar makeup to our student body as a whole that we've begun to meet with as well. And so we've had a meeting with them. We spent some time getting to know them, but also getting to know what makes them tick there at school. What are some of their interests and what are some of the things that they don't like about what we do? We used some of those same students to sit on our panel for our pilot schedule kickoff. And so they were there up on stage in front of the entire student body, all of our teachers. KSDE was there. Some of them were interviewed as individuals by KSDE. So it was really trying to empower some of our students into some leadership roles within what we do. So if you're going to the KSDE Civic Engagement Conference here on the 19th.
Ooh, nice plug, yeah.
Yeah, there is a panel of 3 of our middle school young ladies who are our leadership for our Stuco. They've embodied what civic engagement means. Their Stuco leadership, one of the things they campaigned on was wanting to bring backpacks into school, which is something they campaign on about every other year. We always tell them, put something together, we'll get you in front of staff. They took it to heart and have done that. And so now our students at the middle school are carrying backpacks, which is a huge deal. And so they have presented to Kansas Teachers of the Year, and they will be presenting to whoever goes to their session at the KSDE Civic Engagement Conference as well. So.
And that's phenomenal. And it made me think, Brandon, of another upcoming conference that the service centers are putting on. It's the Kansans Can Symposium, March 5th and 6th. And I know that every single one of our Mercury districts will be presenting at that. So McPherson Middle School, Eisenhower Elementary will have another session for folks to come in and listen to see all the great things that are going on in your schools. So last couple of questions here. What's been the biggest challenge the redesign team has faced so far?
Why don't you guys say? I mean, you're out there, you're in the trenches. What are some of the things that you see that I guess are challenges?
I think probably a really big one for the middle school is trying to keep this year still be a year that we're educating kids while thinking about the future. And it almost feels like you have dual roles of this year exists and there's still a job to do, but know that we are excited with all the wonderful things that we can do in the future, and then really start trying to get those two things to mesh, that the future is now, and that by piloting these things, these kids also get to see these exciting things happening. But it does feel like you are of two brains when you're doing that.
Well put. Very well put.
Very well put.
Yes, very well put. So on the flip side of that, what positive experiences have you all had with the process so far?
I have the opportunity to go into a lot of different classrooms and hear a lot of different things throughout the day. So I actually am starting to see some changes going on that I think are very positive. I see some different strategies being implemented within the classroom. I see some excitement building. I see some teachers realizing that we are maybe getting a little bit closer to being able to do some teaming. Just yesterday, a couple of our math teachers took our PLC time and actually went into a grammar and comp class and then a literature class to see some things that they could start doing together. I also see some more relationships being built amongst staff members and amongst some of the students with different staff members. So some pretty exciting things.
You know, I would tell you some of the highlights for me are just we have relationships with staff, but the relationship that we find, I think, as a redesign team is very different than what I've experienced just as a whole. I feel like it's almost the highlight of the week every week when I get to go and meet with the redesign team and work with them. And so that's been exciting to me, is just the bonding that's coming together with the redesign team. really striving for that common goal.
Well, that's wonderful to hear, and I really appreciate McPherson Middle School and Eisenhower taking the time today to share their redesign projects with everyone on the call. Are there any questions that people have? You can either use the chat, you can unmute and ask. We've got just about a minute left here before we sign off. It's great. I can actually hear a clock ticking somewhere, so that's
That could be us.
so yeah. Well, again, thank you for your time. This chat will be recorded, or the whole thing's recorded. You can go back and listen to it at a later time. You can share it. We will also send out the chat, the text from the chat. So we're very excited to have our Mercury schools on with us and connecting with our Gemini group, both groups with the same direction. And so it's nice to have those, to pair up the Trailblazers together. So with that, the last thing that I'll have, just one announcement, is I just want to thank everybody for the phenomenal attendance and participation at Summit Day #1 in Topeka. Summit Day #2 is coming up February 20th. Again, that's optional. Summit Day #1, we had 26 out of our 28 districts involved in the Mercury and the Gemini project attend. So Summit Day 2, I think you'll see the more of the platform that Summit offers, more into project-based learning, which they have talked to us about project-based learning that they offer being a really good intro before you go into Buck Institute training. They also talk about mentoring and basically Summit's story. And so we're excited about that. But by no means is that agenda set. If you have something, you have questions for Summit that you'd like to have answered that day, you can send those to us ahead of time. In other words, if you want to share what you'd like to know more about Summit, please feel free to share that with us as we build that agenda for Day 2. And just a few last things before we sign off. Please make sure if you want to follow the redesign project on Twitter. We're currently reading a book called The End of Average. It's a phenomenal book, and it really has a lot of application to not only education but all facets of life. And then also don't forget about the Padlet. And as things are happening in your district, sharing those stories on the Padlets is a great way to link everyone up. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off and end this meeting. As typically happens, if you want to stay on and unmute and have a more relaxed conversation about things, feel free to do that. But if you're not into that, happy Friday. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to everyone next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.